r/ask Reddit. Americans, what is American high school actually like? Is it really like how they portray it in movies? You know the school montage segment of Into the Spider-Verse? That's accurate for intensive magnet schools. It varies greatly depending on where you live for one thing. For example, where I grew up, American football isn't really a thing that any of the schools in the area have. However, basketball and baseball are pretty big sports. One thing almost universal is that the cliques you see in movies don't really reflect real life. Everything is a lot more fluid and few people fully fit the stereotypes. Most of the jocks, of which technically I could have been considered one. I was starting third baseman on the varsity baseball team, where I went to school, tended to be of above average intelligence and didn't particularly pick on anyone. The bullies of the school tended to be your more redneck types. Our head cheerleader prom queen was a smoking hot blonde. Sure. But she was also one of the nicest people you'd ever meet, especially to quiet and outcast girls, and only once got in trouble when she punched a bully girl who was picking on an overweight freshman girl. Every high school is very different since funding that goes to education varies greatly depending on where you live, but there are still a few things that are pretty much the same at every school, like drug use and stuff like that. I've also noticed that movies tend to exaggerate the amount of bullying that actually happens at the school. Our schools are extremely unequal. Some are great. A lot are shit. It's exactly how it's portrayed in High School Musical. That movie is as close as you'll get. Break out into a full-on song every 5 minutes. It can be quite close. The Breakfast Club is still quite relevant and relatable. My school didn't have one particular group of popular kids. Majority of people got along quite well and there was a lot of flow. No. That's an idealized thing that isn't remotely true. The guys complained constantly about there not being any attractive girls in our school and looked shocked when girls retorted with there aren't any attractive guys either. School usually starts at or just after sunrise. You almost never see that in films. There were so many days I went to school in the dark. It's nothing like the movies. Where I go to high school, the jocks, geeks and nerds aren't separate groups. Like I'm in a vocational computer and networking class with a football player. It is nothing like in the movies. 90% of the student body do not look like they walked out of Abercrombie and Fitch. They've got acne. Are actually not in their early 20s playing a teenager. And I think there are police officers or monitors everywhere. I can weigh in from the teaching side. The middle class high schools tend to be like you've seen on TV, with a jock clique and a punk clique and a drama clique. But also a large mass of average kids just living their lives. The higher class, richer neighborhoods you get, the more of a pressure cooker environment you see in the schools. More work. Higher expectations. Identity tied closer to familial wealth and academic success than drama or geek. The lower class you get, the sadder things are. The worse the instruction is. The more crowded the classrooms are. The more the emphasis is just on getting everyone through to graduation rather than their individual interests like sports or drama. Let alone pressuring them to outdo one another academically. TL. Doctor yes. In middle class public high schools. The movies lied. They have only been 3.5 times people have spontaneously broken out into song while I've been here. Being nerdy isn't uncool like a lot of movies are portrayed. At least at my high school, 9 years ago. Being smart actually made you part of the popular crowd. Actually, not really for me. It's kind of just everyone has stuff to do and there's no big group that bullies kids or a group of popular kids. It seems like everyone realizes we're all equally useless. I should mention that I'm friends with quite a few jocks. And I am a pretty big nerd. Fights are minimal and most people look down on you if you bully or harass someone. Everyone knows each other and so no one messes with each other because that could mess up whole friend groups. Some kid smeared poo on the wall and West Side was written next to it. I feel that's a pretty fair description. I was the same age as the kids in American Pie and Buffy. That shit came out right as we were graduating and we had a blast identifying who all the characters in the movie were in our school. That movie exaggerated everything and made it all seem cooler and safer than it actually was. But they weren't entirely divorced from our reality. We related to American Pie in a non-serious way because it was a funny, exaggerated lampoon of our own behavior. And like the kids in those movies, we had a largely carefree existence. I was fortunate to attend an excellent public high school in a rural but prosperous little town. Like the movies, violence and poverty affected very few of us. Looking back on it, I suppose it was a rather charmed existence for most kids at my high school. And of course the kid we all identified as Stifler laughed about it at first but then was kinda pissed. Just like a Stifler would. Way less dramatic. It's quite boring. There will always be a couple of assholes here and there. But as long as you mind your business you should be fine. Most people don't tread outside of their cliches though. Teenagers are much worse in real life. Yay, we're all 6 feet 2 buff 23-year-olds. As a high school teacher I would say it totally depends on the school. Movies hit on the extremes of what high school is like, but I definitely see all of it daily. Just with less attractive younger people, as people in high school are 14-18 and not 24-30 like some shows try to make it seem. Generally the jocks are still the super popular ones. They might not be dumb, but they are still usually the most outgoing and have the most friends. People still bully other people for many reasons. Weight, sexuality, promiscuity, etc. But now most of that bullying is done online instead of in person. Kids are more open about drugs, drinking, and sex, but mostly just because they don't think that they can get into trouble for any of it. And unless the school has a strict no phone policy, kids text, Snapchat, etc. constantly. There is nothing like giving kids 10 minutes of free time and having the students text each other across the classroom instead of talk to each other. There's no cliques like in movies. And there's no affair nerd access either. People mostly stick to themselves until lunch. And teachers are mostly well-meaning, if a little too eager to give out as much homework as possible. Someone was excited to answer this. Superbad got the closest to an actual high school. The US is huge and diverse, and the high school experience really depends on where you live. After my freshman year of high school my family moved and I transferred from a high school that had about 1,200 students in a liberal college town to a high school that had 400 students in a small conservative farming village. They were less than an hour apart but could not have been any more different. I felt like a foreign exchange student and went through a period of culture shock trying to adjust. Depends. In Iowa there isn't fights, but there is a lot of drama. The girls spread the gossip and fight while the boys are chill. American Vandal is the closest I've seen to my late 2000s high school experience, ignoring the whole dick drawing fiasco. Nah, high school is not nearly as what it is like in the movies. It's more petty drama and does not prepare you for the adult world ahead. It's way more violent with more sex and drugs. More like the television show Freaks and Geeks. Not all schools are equal in quality or funding. But in mine, I learned from textbooks from 1993 at the latest. I graduated last year. It's up to the district to find the schools pay teachers, I think. So the government doesn't have to do shit. Who knows how much worse other kids have it. Edit. Underfunding led to absolutely zero field trips. We had to pay for lockers. Like a monthly rent thing. If we had a hat or hoodie on, we had to pay $1 to prevent it from being taken to the office. On the upside, my school turned an empty classroom into a fully functioning coffee shop with donated materials and tools to make some extra coin for our school. There aren't popular or unpopular students. There are students who do stuff and students who don't. Depends on the movie. Either way, it's generally a mess. I went to 3. All had their problems. But it also depends on the area. My third was definitely a better experience simply because the area was better. Depends on the state, city, and which high school you go to. My city had 3 high schools and 2 schools for those that don't fit into traditional learning methods. That is, one was literally a farm where you got sent to if you ever went to jail, put on probation, and or got pregnant, so I'm told. One high school was known for rich Jewish kids and drugs. The other was great at athletics and known for a couple gun incidents. Then there was my high school, which held the #1 public school spot in the US for a long time, supposedly, recently fallen down the list. But it had no sports at all and was full of nerds. Everyone was friendly to everyone. There were no fights. There were cliques, groups of people with similar interests, including one you might consider the popular crowd, but honestly no one liked them but themselves. They were made up of the relatively, honestly, we had something called, insert school name, hot, more attractive kids. Which were also rich. The only common thing I experienced, as a guy, was hearing about the girl drama, such as one talking bad about another, starting drama, or generally just girls hating other girls. My Russian girlfriend is always amazed that everyone has their own locker. She always thought that was just in the movies. I can confirm we all have lockers. I was kind of oblivious when I was in high school, so I never really paid attention to how it was. I was friends with a wide range of people at my school but never really stuck to a clique. Everyone to me seemed normal, no one taking sides because of what after school activity you were in. Most of my friends I hung out with went to another school and I worked my senior year and left school early for it, so I didn't really care about senior year because I was already accepted into a school and had a job. It's been 14 years since high school and I don't talk to a single person from there, so shrug. It's not actually populated by interesting 20-30 somethings like the movies. Just stupid kids. Not American, but Canadian, and I'd say superb. It was probably the closest to my high school experience. I went from 2002 to 2006 and that movie captured a lot of the inside jokes that we had in high school. Even had multiple run-ins with cool police officers. I haven't encountered the group of 3 mean ferals, so not accurate, tbh. Well, there's far less spontaneous singing and dancing, if that's what you're asking. It is pretty trash. You do nothing in class and are forced to stress over tests that are over pointless things. No, because the outcast kids can't become popular with an inspirational speech and a new outfit. No hope. They're all pretty different. Mine was an all-girls Catholic high school with 22 girls in my senior class. Uniform was uncomfortable, but it was engineering focused. A lot of drama, tampons, and first gay experiences, but really fun. In a lot of movies, the popular kids are ruthless bullies, like the stereotypical jock asshole. At my high school, all of the popular kids were actually really nice. Usually well-adjusted kids who got good grades and played a sport or two. Bullying happened a lot, but it wasn't exactly endorsed the way it is sometimes portrayed in movies. My high school had all the typical groups of kids. Nerds, jocks, beauty queens, artists, theater kids. The only difference was that no one picked on or bullied anyone else. It just wasn't a thing to do. It wasn't a school pride thing. It just didn't happen. In fact, if you were known to bully or harass someone else, you were seen as an asshole and it was questioned why it was so important to you to harass that kid. No, it's actually worse. Basically everyone's experience is different. Watch The Breakfast Club. It's like that but with more angst. The movie Dazed and Confused is the best representation of high school in the 80s ever captured on film. No, it never has been. Growing up is always awful. Sometimes not for some. But no, it's not that cliche. My nephew tells me that, in his rural Midwest town where there's nothing to do, most of his class is addicted to vaping. Yup, for most of them. There is somewhat less dancing, but yes. Everyone looks a lot younger than on TV. You're not going to get one answer to this question. America is huge and extremely diverse economically and culturally. My parents said, Fast Times in Ridgemount High was pretty accurate for back in the day. That being said, now that I think about that, you kinda gross. Basically, yes, maybe a tad less dramatic. Most times, no. Biggest difference is everybody is far too happy to be there in most movies I've seen. As a current high school senior with friends who are inspiring artists, I can confirm it is exactly like the movies minus one aspect, college applications. Every day there's always either a breakout into a song or someone's breaking down in the corner. Mean Girls is pretty accurate. It's all school politics. Kids running around playing music on speakers at lunch and kids making jokes about what the rest of the world thinks of us. Vaping is rampant and drugs can be bought somewhere on campus. I ain't ratting out my dealer if I have one. There's always a group of furries that like to have fun together. There are those speedsters lugging around large bags and running. It's all fun and games till we hear about another shooting. The clique scene in the movies are over exaggerated. There aren't really any cliques in high school. From my experience on the football team, jocks aren't actually stupid assholes. Sure, some of them aren't smart and there are some mean guys, but for the most part the athletes are the more well-behaved people in class. Probably because being able to play depends on your grades. But still, most athletes are actually really polite and shit. I went to a private high school and everyone says that it's better than public school. Well, it's not. Every private school ever just tries to advertise their school as better than, when actually you still get the same cliquey groups, rumors, and isolation. The only difference is with private school, you get more snobby teenagers and it's way more competitive. I went to public middle school before that. That was also awful. But at least I didn't have to deal with feeling less than there. We definitely do not spontaneously burst into song. I can tell you that much. I think in movies high schoolers are far more cruel to each other than in real life. Not saying there isn't bullying, but it's not as dramatic and exaggerated as in the movies. Yes. But actually no. At least in my high school, sure, you have the different friends groups. But they aren't the stereotypical groups like populars, jocks, nerds, and such. Also, there is not that kid that goes around pinning people to lockers or throwing people's books on the ground. That being said, there are fights which actually are similar in the movies. Everyone gets their phones out and records it until a teacher or someone comes to split it up. This is probably my school, but teachers are not usually pricks unless you are a prick towards them. And lunchroom food isn't complete trash either. I mean, it's not amazing, but it's edible. Edit. So I'm not going through all the comments and say what can just be said as a whole. Everyone's saying it's a lie about the food part. Which is fine, but you need to remember that we all did and are going to different schools. This is just what is happening in my high school at the moment. We had too many people to have the typical groups. My graduating class was over 800 and we had about 4,000 people in the school. Not nearly as exciting and the drama is extra stupid. Plus a lot of people are really immature and I've never met a stereotypical bully or jock or nerd yet. Thanks for watching, mate. Make sure to smash that star button for more high quality content.